With a graphic designer, it will not only save you a lot of money, but it'll save you a lot of heartache and frustration.
What the project goals are, then getting concepts together. So then for me to get visuals together of 3 to 4 ideas.
A good graphic designer will set the expectations, will give you ideas and all those other kind of things. This is money well spent. Hello, everyone. I'm David Marinak with Repackaging Revolution. Today's guest is Peg Brown. Peg is senior graphic designer working freelance. For the past 15 years, she's first co-founded a beverage company, then working in packaging since 2026. She began handling the pre-press for us at standuppouches.net and also handling sales as a project manager and then custom design packaging. Since then, she's worked freelance again, startups with some startup CPG companies and existing brands such as Bacardi, Homedics, and is it Demisa? Is that how I pronounce that? Dermisa Skincare. She lives in Central Florida with her 3 daughters. Peg Brown, welcome to the show.
Hey, David. Nice to see you.
I've always wanted to do this just for the simple fact that, it's one of those graphic design and getting into artwork is such a huge stumbling block.
Yes.
And and while we work together a lot on the film and the flexible side of things, it's got to be the same in the bottles and jars and boxes and folding cartons, right? Is that kind of the same? Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think so, because it is that entry part of a discussion we always have with a customer is
exactly.
Do you have the art ready, and then the art comes all these different ways. So
well, and that's if there's anything I want to try to help people understand it when we come out of this thing and we share this episode is the fact that there's a real importance. I mean, a lot of people think that, graphic design is, and maybe some people have the chops to do it, let's face it, and they can do it themselves. But oftentimes what I always introduce you as, Peg, is that person that's going to make sure it's print ready. You can design artwork and you can have your Photoshop or AI or it was Adobe Illustrator and all that. But if it's not set up in the way that the factory needs, and that's why it was always nice to be able to say, you got to talk to Peg. And to be able to put it in the right format. And that's where a lot of people get lost. And I'm just checking if it was just me or you see the same.
Right.
Where they just sort of, they think that they can do this because they did a brochure once on Publisher. So suddenly they can create their own artwork. It's a lot more complicated than that, right?
Yes, totally. Sometimes brands are first digitally popular. So now print becomes specific because they need a few SKUs and in a few different ways. So they need to make sure those colors match and that it's set up right. So we always had to kind of work backwards on what somebody needed, but they also needed to be able to understand how to set the artwork of these windows and sometimes just to have it unprinted in areas so that the foil showed through. You could do that, but somebody had to understand what they were doing to get it done, or we were able to maybe take it on a little bit and guide their team. But if they could do it, then they had what they needed. So was a deal. Yeah.
But my point with this is that you still usually, for the most part, needed to hold their hand a little bit. Is that fair?
Yes, totally. If they hadn't worked in packaging before, then yes, it's hard to now feel comfortable that you're going to place this huge packaging order and it's going to come out how you want it to. And this designer put all these gradients and odd things, and you need to make sure that it's cohesive to what you need, especially when it's retail ready.
Right.
You don't want
to. Is it better when you have somebody that's comes in? I mean, is it always easier for a graphic designer to just kind of come in there cold and say, just do this, start to finish, and pay you to do this versus this sort of, well, here's some of what I'm doing, Peg, and then you fix the rest. I mean, that's got to get clunky, right? I mean, I try to make sure I set expectations for people from the very beginning with us. As I say, we don't design artwork.
Right.
We can refer you to Peg Brown and she can take this over.
right on the
But
counter. Yeah.
right, is there any, or is it normally like, yeah, does it really bog you down when it's sort of already in the mix, or are they better off to just come with a clean slate and say, Peg, just help me design something?
Sometimes the mix is fine because some information you need it anyways. So even if
Right,
I have to move it, it doesn't matter. I still need nutrition facts. I need it all that way. So I'm gonna kind of redo it anyways to make
right,
it work. And now, especially, it's gonna have to now go on the proper dye lines.
right.
So a lot of times, right, we get conceptual stuff of 3D bags and AI bags,
Yeah.
and it's great. This looks great, but how do you really want this set up? So
That's why I wanted, that's one of
actually
the,
set it up. Yeah.
exactly. And that was one of the main reasons I wanted to have you here, is that it's
Yeah.
just not that, AI, and you can have these renderings and all that, but you still have to, it still has to get on a template, or a die line, whatever you want to refer to it. And it still has to work on the production line, for
Yeah.
them to be able to kind of print it the way you want. So there's a couple of those steps that just, I
Yeah.
just, you know what I mean?
You also have to be happy with understanding how it's gonna print. So
Right.
people get 3D done, that 3D controls all the light in Photoshop. So, of course, it looks all illuminated, it looks nice, but
Yep.
is that light brown you're using, is that really gonna work on what
Right.
you want printed? So it's kinda like, do you need a print sample, or do you understand what it
Right.
should look like and the materials and the
Well,
finishes? So
yeah, and I've created video when you and I have talked
uh
with clients
show
before, where
bags.
I try to just explain to them, when you get into this space, the custom printed space, especially how we print, nothing's going to embarrass anybody. You're not going to have a red that's going to look yellow. You know what I mean? But a lot of times people who are unfamiliar. I mean, I'm still amazed at how many people will contact us and then attach their artwork thinking that it's just that simple. Go ahead and
Right.
print it. I need 10,000. Like, what? No.
Yeah,
And
you put on the diet. Yeah.
well, and again, we have always been positioned in that small to medium and then medium to large range. And you can definitely tell when you're dealing with the startups, and they try to think that they're saving money by doing
Right.
some of the work in advance. And I just like, man, the best results that we've had, is when you're able to put your artistic twist on it as well. Do you enjoy that when somebody goes, Peg, here's what I'm thinking of, but give me some ideas of, purses, or I don't know, whatever that is.
Yeah,
Do you do
yeah, I
that?
mean, that's been fun because, yeah, we know how the packaging's processed and how it's getting quoted.
Right.
So if you can leave off some areas printed and show the
Yeah.
foil underneath,
Yeah.
and then maybe just one cylinder instead of white underneath, then it looks like foil. And we were able to do some kind of more confident packaging, just kind of going out there with trying some ways to take maybe they're already their existing packaging for pet foods or something and adjusting it to make sure
Yeah,
uh,
but you've
it's
you've
look
dealt with those other people that
yeah,
sort of come in and they're packaging
big money.
pecans or whatever it is, and they have
Yes.
nothing. And
Yeah,
that's kind of where
totally.
your artistic flair can come in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's been fun because those have been ones to scale out. Yeah,
Right.
definitely having to give them, hey, you got this quote from David, but you're now putting art that we need to make sure that die lines
Right.
are deadlines that we
Right.
need to communicate. So that's kind of a big deal with, right, when you have a designer working for you, what's their calendar of how they're getting it
Yes.
done for you because
Yep.
you want to order and you maybe have a timeline that's going against Chinese New Year. So you kind
Right.
of need to understand the bigger picture of getting it approved and stuff. It doesn't, if it's a project they can do in 2 weeks, or is this
Uh,
going to take back and forth and printing it and needing to see in-hand samples. And
yep.
so
Well,
sometimes that bottlenecks the process too.
which is another point that I try to emphasize with any packaging reseller that we work with, is you've got to
Yeah.
ask those questions in advance of, when do you need these?
Yes.
These fundamental questions that are often overlooked, and to
Yeah.
assume that somebody is going to fall right in line and this is going to be a 4-week run. It may be, but they still have to have their files set up and the artwork approved and all that. But
Yes.
what I'm getting at is that's where there's such a disconnect out there from the sales side, from my
Yeah.
end,
Yeah.
when people aren't asking those questions. Because look, if they're looking at for Q1 in February sometime, that's a different story. But if
Right.
they're looking to somehow pump this stuff out and get it delivered by the end of December, we have to gauge and adjust those kind of like, all right, well, this is
Yeah.
definitely a digital side of things, and this is
Right.
definitely but on the flip side, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, you have to understand that this is a different print process. This is a
Yes.
different setup. So and again, we live in a world, and I know I'm just saying what I mean, everybody's in a microwave society, and it's they want it yesterday, but then again, they're just getting us the artwork today, or they're just conceptually talking about it with you, and it's like, and I just see a
Yeah.
lot of, and
Yeah.
it's not just in the print side of things, but it's a lot in the packaging side. People sadly think of packaging at the last minute, Peg.
Yeah.
And they
They need
spend,
it. Yeah.
you're right. And then they just wing it, and they wonder why their product flopped at retail, because they will get a call and they're trying to launch, or they've got an opportunity at Walmart or whatever it may be. And they think of their packaging at the last minute and then it ends up being in a plain bag with a stick-on label. And it's
Right.
like,
Right. Or
what
they
would you
rush
expect?
it. They rush it, they misprint it. So
Right.
we had somebody
That
print.
too.
We did collagen bags
Yeah.
where it said it was produced in a facility that handled nuts or something like
Yeah.
that, and then she had a cover over each label. So then you had to spend all this manual time to recover so it
Exactly.
didn't go out.
Right.
So
And
just
those are the kind of things that
process.
happen when again, and I try as much as I can to encourage resellers to still go after the print world, still go after the pouches, folding cartons, whatever it may be. And the unique part of this is that our factories are very willing to do smaller runs. That's not that that's our calling card, but what we try to tell anybody who will listen is oftentimes, I don't care whether you're Roland Foods, Nestle's, or Aunt Mabel's brownie mix,
Right.
everybody needs to understand. Nobody wants to start out with a million of anything. Everybody wants to feel like they can run a small run, even a
Right.
batch, even a test run, not just samples, but to be able to really gauge, maybe take some to a trade show, maybe take
Right.
some to their distributors and say, what do you think of this? Just something to,
Or
and
e-commerce.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that's where we picked up a lot of business by being able to do that, where the big boys don't want to do that. They
Yeah.
want to run volume. Oh man, we're not touching this thing. 1,000 pieces, forget it. And
Right.
and that to me, going old school on the packaging sales side, I often thought that was such a feather in our cap, because we were able to do something nobody else could do. And then take it a step further. Once we were able to do this run, for example, and get in there and use that as a wedge to get in the door, then we have an opportunity to build that relationship. And the point I'm getting at is there's a lot of missed opportunities
Oh,
to
yeah.
build relationships with the customer. And look, rarely are your clients, my clients, a one SKU and done. Yes, we've
Right.
had Aunt Mabel and that kind of stuff, but if you're dealing with a legit company, there's other SKUs behind it. And
Yep.
if you've been able to help them scale and help them grow into other SKUs, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
But it's just, and I go off on these tangents because it seems like over the last 20 or so years in this packaging space, we've hired a bunch of hired guns that are looking for a deal. They're looking to, what's it cost? Let me sell it to you, versus let me get to know Peg first. Let me see what the big picture is with Peg, not just on this SKU, but let me see what, hypothetically, if you were the customer,
Sure.
but saying, what else is here and what other problems do you have? That's the role of a packaging reseller that I think has been a lost art.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
To meet the client where they need and not have middle sales people to have to keep having to flag down and wait
or
to hear about this timeline. Yeah.
timeline, or that's how mistakes happen, and that's when
Yeah.
things go awry. And today's packaging reseller is more of
Oh, yeah.
more of an order taker. And to me, the lost art is being able to we don't have to sell somebody film. If they really want a bottle or a jar or whatever, look, knock yourself out. We can handle
Right.
it just like you have.
Right.
There is, there's so many different options that are out there, but it's based upon what the customer wants, not based
Right.
upon what we can sell them. And I see a
Right.
lot of packaging resellers doing that, and it drives me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
We only sell corrugated. That's what you're going to get, Peg. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's corrugated. But
Yeah.
I'm shipping fine powder. I mean, well, it's you know what? We only sell corrugated. Put it in a box.
Right.
I'll sell it to you. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that's not a reseller. That's some sort of a glorified order taker.
Right. Yeah. You have to
know?
look at the problem backwards of
Right.
what you need. So
Right. Let me ask you a question. Do you find in your space from the freelance side of things, creating artwork, is there any particular industry that you feel is poised or ripe or something that you went, man, I mean, for example, I digress, but for example, when digital printing kind of came on, it was one of those sort of like, oh, wow, we can get into that space, but digital doesn't necessarily work in the liquid side of things. It certainly doesn't work in the
Oh.
spouted. But what I'm getting at, have you noticed a trend or anything? I know cannabis was really, really hot for a long time. You've done some stuff in the beverage world, food in general. Or, like, is there any industry that's like a, kind of a bread and butter for Peg Brown, the pet space or,
Yeah, I think I've done a lot of the pet space and then CPG. So
Yeah.
a lot of like snacks, stuff
Right.
like that. I think that's when it's going in pouches, it's more dry, like a granola or something.
Yeah.
Or mix, something like that. So that, my bread and butter is in that kind of like more snack world now. But I've done cannabis. Cannabis changes all the time in the packaging they need.
Yeah,
So
I know.
they constantly, so a lot of times, they're using labels and stuff because it changes so much. It wouldn't make sense to print so much custom. So they'd rather just print their logo on a bag.
Yeah.
And then just put these big labels because it's always changing per state.
Yeah, sad, but that's what I'm seeing too. And it's not because they're necessarily changing. It's the regulations are changing and they're throwing wrenches out there. And I mean, there's some places in Ohio that are, suddenly now the state's getting involved again. And we're not getting enough of our take on the, it's always about the money. Like we teach our kids,
for sure.
follow the money. So they're not getting enough of the tax revenue or whatever. But I just see I still see a lot of opportunity in the print space, and it's not going to go away. And
no, not at all.
You know what I mean? And it's and regardless of dealing with the Amazons of the world, and I know that can kind of lessen the need for an 8-color bag to hold coffee, but it still needs to protect the product, and it still needs to have some graphics on there, because at the end of the day you are selling your brand. And you know what I mean? And it's just like, and there's a lot of the haters that are out there in the anti-plastic world, and we can't do this, but my take has always been, well, what are you going to use? And it's because, look, that's why I asked you about the different industries and stuff, because a lot of that needs the barrier properties. A lot of that needs, the protection, or whatever the product is not going to last, or it'll go stale. Let's talk about the pet space. I mean, let's face it, if Fido gets sick because the bag didn't protect it, and, the product went rancid, paper's not going to do that. A glass jar maybe, but it's going to be 10 times more expensive, and it's just like, there's all those little things that I think, and I've often quoted this online, but I really think there's a lot of people that they're not aware of what all is involved in the printing space and the film space and the environmental part of this. It's very easy to hate on one part and just assume that paper is okay.
That'll work at that matching result.
Exactly. And and that's the thing that I see a lot of Amazon going down is paper. But come on, guys. I mean, you can't sit here and tell me that that's better for the environment either. How many trees are we cutting down? And we still
comment. So he said, case in point is our maple sugar. Without barrier protection, it turns into a solid brick.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, you have to have, yeah, I mean, it has to withhold your product. So
100%. Well,
so sometimes some stuff's a little bit conceptual, sometimes
right.
coming from certain teams, marketing teams from a
Yeah.
company.
Well, we see a lot of,
Can actually do.
Exactly. And, film itself, has its place. The one thing that I've often been saying, and I'm curious if this comes up in your world, when you're working with, I don't care how big or how tiny they are, do you find the discussion kind of go into the different structure? For example, the anti-plastic, or I need paper, it's got to be biodegradable, or are you already at that point, you already know that they want something in a film or something?
Yeah, I think I already by now know about the film, because
Right.
otherwise it's a headache. It's not, they don't know where that's going to go. That's
Right.
Or it's being passed off, and then they're going to deal with it of having this idea of what they think they can print to make something now biodegradable.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's kind of a big deal where, sometimes those things there are vendors for those things, but are you willing to pay for that? Is that
Yeah,
really
right.
start? Is that really understood? Can you outline that on the packaging for that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, how committed are you to now wanting this type of packaging? Or can you do first runs this way of just doing the pouches and having the notation to recycle it?
Yeah.
So realistically of what
exactly.
you, yeah.
Right. And on top of that too, I mean, you just have to, this goes back to asking the right questions. What are your expectations, Mr. Customer? What are you trying to do here? Are you being, some places, and this, Peg, some places have a directive from their retailers or from their distributors saying, we got to be out of this material. We got to be in X by,
Right.
next month or whatever. And regardless of the situation, it's knowing that's when the packaging reseller can kind of put them in different options. And then, of course, we have to quickly sort of pivot into, well, you need to understand the parameters here. You want to go biodegradable, there's a shelf life issue. It can be made, but you're looking at potentially an 18-month shelf life versus, 3 years, whatever it is, maybe with a barrier film. There's all these different things. And I just think a lot of it is communication. It always comes down to that. But I also think a lot of it is trying to understand what the client's expectations are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And like Hugh said, how many startups lean on the designer to make a packaging substrate choice, though? And that's true. Sometimes responsibilities there where a founder just kind of doesn't know. And they're just kind of like, well, you do packaging. Maybe you understand this more than me, without kind of getting where they need to be with these business decisions and what they're going to be spending and realistically how to scale it, especially as they're going to retail or anything like
that. And again, that opens, and Hugh's right. I mean, it just depends. We just have to continue to emphasize, what that expectation is, because, let's face it, we count on the Peg Browns to choose a substrate. But again, if we don't know what are they looking to do? Sometimes they're looking to match a business card color. For example, this red is in our logo and it's got to match, or whatever it may be. And if we know that, part of that is trying to make sure that they understand that, the color itself, let's just say a PMS2 was a 185, whatever a red color is, but to be able to have that, and they need to understand if that color is printed on a clear film with nothing behind it, that it's going to be washed out. If we underprint it white, it'll look a certain way. It'll also look different if we print it under or over a more of an opaque structure, a foil, a film. And it's those differences that kind of throw people off, and they just assume one color is just what's one color because they're used to seeing it online in a brochure or some other thing. And I just, you and I have always had a pretty good comeback for that, trying to explain to people, you've got to understand that, printing on film is not the same as printing on paper.
yeah, absolutely.
The brochure. And but again, you have to sort of walk these people around, and it's a tightrope sometimes, because we want to do right by them. We definitely want to help them grow and succeed, but they get lost in the weeds, and then they get caught up in perfection. Oh my goodness, it's got to be perfect. If it's not, I can't. And you know what?
And samples, things like that. We've done Epson, proof runs regularly, and then if it's needed, right, then you can do
the virtual
printed. Just do virtual, and then you can use those for the trade shows and stuff too. So
that's sort of exactly,
and off and sample it.
You're right, and I found that too over the years, that that virtual packaging, is but I also have to talk them through that this is not a packaging test. This is how your colors look on a hand sample. It's okay to test for sizing, but if you're going to fill that bag with 10 pounds and drop it off a 10-foot ladder to see if that's not what it's for.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's all these, but still, but that's all part of just making sure the customer understands, making sure they understand the nuances. And the final thing we've always told them is, we're not going to embarrass them. This is sometimes with some people, and they're so particular on their schemes, and we're all for it. It may take, and even I think Hugh went through this once, it may take the second run to really dial in that recipe, so to speak. By recipe, I mean the colors, to kind of hit that certain spot. But in reality, it's still very, very close. There's not a huge swing when a red looks yellow is a malfunction, is a reject. That wouldn't even be shipped. Right. So that's where, and again, we just, everybody wants it perfect, and I get it. And for the most part, I'd say 98% of the time, it's spot on. But there may be those times, and we often add or tell the client, if you're concerned so much about this blue, we'll provide a cylinder. If you want to change it on your next run, we'll provide a cylinder for nothing. So we can tweak it. There's just all those little things that I think a lot of people need to know, that they do have options. There are steps in this. Striving for perfection, you're going to be waiting a long time. And having it perfect. I get it. We're going to strive for that, but you may end up with excellence. It may not be perfection until we really, you have to be able to go through this and test this, right?
Yes.
So I hope you like this content. If you want more of it, I put together a Specialized Packaging Alliance, a group of packaging professionals that are in different facets of this industry. We have webinars, we have meetings. The idea is to share information about this great industry of packaging, whether that be from the sales side of things to the marketing, even to the end users. My point with this is I'd love to have you join us, the Specialized Packaging Alliance. Check out the link below to learn more. Thanks. Yeah, it's just really interesting how this is all kind of boiled down over the years with us, how these projects have kind of evolved, but we still are talking about the blocking and tackling. We still are. What is there anything out there, if you had your magic wand, so to speak, and what's the perfect client to a Peg Brown? What does that look like? Is it the client like that knows what they want and they're ready to go? Or is it that client, kind of like the question before, that needs your artistic flair, but what's the best kind of client for a Peg Brown that really fits into your wheelhouse?
Usually ones that just already have their project guideline, their goals on a project.
Right.
So that helps because they've already worked with their marketing team. They already know what they've already processed maybe before. Right. Maybe it hasn't been in packaging yet, but they have brand guidelines. They have an idea of an image that they put out. So they're able to show me an example of some packaging they like, and then their general branding. And it's kind of just putting it together and just getting kind of the same spots for now this snack product they offer, doing nutrition panels where everything sits. So that my ideal client, I can give them, I have a packaging design brief. So it helps them to just let me know, here's the barcodes, here's this, here's that. And this is what we're thinking, if you can follow something like this. And if they don't know, then conceptually, I need to put together three different ideas, kind of following their general brand goals. And that's kind of nice because if I can get some visuals done,
Yeah. Right.
then that convo is after that. It's like easier to kind of know where to refine, where to know, oh, this is a good idea, but then this
Right.
is more in line of what we're thinking. Just do a little bit of this and this, and then I can revise better from there. So that's kind of an ideal client that we can kind of just communicate on it and get their general ideas of what they already have been wanting
Yeah. Right.
down. So, and they just send me over everything, all the logos and seals, USDA organic, just mentioning it, just writing it down, then I'm able to look it up. So that helps to have
So another
binder.
question to
Yeah.
to kind of go beyond that. So if I was a new client and I came to you with some rough ideas and renderings on this, pretzel mix or whatever it may be, am I sending you the FDA approval and the barcode, or are you doing that?
I get it. So it's easy for me to source. And then
Yeah.
over the years,
Yeah.
I just have a folder where I just label that. And then I used to use that internally when we had other designers freelance with us
Yeah.
to say, hey, you know what? You're going to need this. You're going to need gluten-free or USDA
Nice.
organic. And to actually just have it already sitting somewhere, then you
Smart.
can just go grab it, have it. So,
Well,
so
that's
people don't
it-
need to provide it. I can find it. I just need it mentioned on something to say, hey,
yeah.
it's going to be on this on the front, this on the back, and
Yeah.
manufactured here, and just stuff that you always find on packaging. So it's easy to lay out those questions and ask somebody, what are the call outs? What are the seals that you're using? Where's the nutrition panel, your barcodes, just any QR codes,
Yeah.
just anything. People have it in general. They know,
Yeah.
even if
but-
they don't know the art, they
Yeah.
know I need this. It's going to have a barcode because it's now retail ready. And so,
Yeah, but I really wanted to emphasize and just what you had mentioned. I know you glossed over it, but it's really important, the difference between a really helpful graphic designer
yeah,
is to be able to do some of the look. If I had to come up with some sort of a EPA regulation sticker or
right,
whatever it is, I'd go down that rabbit hole for a month.
right.
But you understand what that is and be able to talk that out. Take me into start to finish when somebody kind of comes to you and they what's the general timeline with working with Peg Brown to start out and then get to something they can literally make a decision on? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking a couple of conversations? Because I think that's also part of this too, Peg, is I want them to have good expectations. If they know
Oh, yeah.
when they see this and they go, you know what, I need to talk with Peg probably, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, or whatever. And it's going to take her probably 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever that may be. Help us with those expectations, start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is like a 2-week process in general to say
Yeah.
it, just to say it conservatively.
Good.
Sometimes stuff gets done sooner, but realistically, sometimes between people going back and forth.
That's why I
'Cause it is
asked.
freelance in that way, right? The way
Yep.
working for a company. So yeah, from the start, for me, it is having a good idea of what the project goals are. So I need to understand what the client really needs
Right.
and ask those questions. So having that answered of like the packaging design brief of what do you already have?
Yeah.
What are you thinking and all that? Then getting concepts together. So then for me to get visuals together of 3 to 4 ideas, I can follow what they want. I can do something a little bit different, and then
Yeah.
I can be like a wild card. So I can
Yeah.
totally do something a little more different.
Yeah. Right.
And then people can go, oh, okay, hey, I actually like just a
Yeah,
little
right.
bit of what that is, put it here.
Right.
So once you have visuals, it's easier to then narrow it down. And
Right.
then usually at that same time in those 2 weeks, people are circling back and saying, oh, well, now we finally got the final barcode.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
just put placeholders and then flip it out and then do it on the die lines themselves. So
Right.
realistically, they need to know what's going to be printed at the scale it's going to be
Sure.
printed.
Sure.
So the most visual they can get it at that level helps to make a decision. So putting it on die lines, then doing a 3D of the pouch, hey, here's this, here's all of this, if it's
Yeah,
all
right.
together even, and but it's not final. This is just a 3D visual. So you can't think this gradient's gonna look this same way till we actually have, like a sample run or something. Uh,
Well, what I want to do is give people a really good idea of the how a Peg Brown works. So they talk with you initially. Somehow they're connected, whether it's through us or your own or whatever
sure.
it is. And you guys do. Is this usually like a half hour consult kind of thing,
Yeah.
just to kind of talk about a project?
Yeah, totally. See where it is. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's already been something already in a family of products that's been
yeah.
out. So now it's
And
actually
then and
ready.
then when they say, "Okay, Peg, let's go to the next step," is there I'm not asking for charges, but that's where you bill them, correct?
Yes, yeah, and I can send
Good.
over a contract saying, this is what I'm agreeing to do. This is what you're receiving. These are the
And
files you're getting. These are the
well, and that's why I wanted to
it's
say that
important. Yeah,
because it is important, and it's important that for people to understand that it's not free. And I'm not saying towards you, I'm saying the same thing on my end, where a lot of people just we're going to make some free rendering and we're going to go chase something. I mean, that's old school, but
right,
on the flip side, there's got to be some sort of a skin in the game from the client, and I don't care if it's some sort of a nominal amount of money for them to, just like you said, here's what here's what I've heard you are expecting from me for this stage or next step
right,
or whatever it is. And again, comes down to communication, being able to clearly state expectations and timelines and that kind of stuff. But I want people to know that this is money well spent, and that's why we don't do it internally. We outsource it because I want people to work with the Peg Browns of the world, because I know from my end I don't have to screw around with it. Meaning
right,
when you're done with it and we get the art, and now we're going into making electronic proof for the customer and that kind of stuff in our world. That's the biggest pain in the neck, is when the artwork isn't in the right. And you and I have gone through this, where it's
yeah,
somebody claims that they're the art director and they're not giving it to us in the right file. Then they get belligerent because we're saying, no, man, you're wrong. But again, I just want people to really know that that first consult, whatever way and how you handle it, that's okay. Let's talk. But once you really start to put you got to put some skin in the game, and you got to
right.
keep, because again, it's just. But I wanted to say that just for everybody's benefit, because this stuff isn't this isn't free. But you would be amazed, Peg, how many people what. Huh? What am I? It just, anyhow,
Yeah,
I digress.
they think it's just kind of a part of the process and stuff too, from
Yeah.
packaging
Well,
right, or
exactly. And then
press,
and then
right,
we're going to send them samples, and that's also free. Like, no, people, no.
right, right. So yeah,
But
working with a designer, right?
yeah,
They can communicate better what
right.
they need done and easy.
Well, it's just, but at the end of the day, my point has always been, with a graphic designer, it will, in the long run, not only save you a lot of money, but it'll save you a lot of heartache and frustration, because a good graphic designer will set the expectations, will give you ideas and all those other kind of things, but it'll help our job, because at the end of the day, you still are in this, conversation with Peg Brown to hopefully get something custom printed at the end with the production. I don't care
Right.
whether it's a folding carton or a pouch or a bottle or jar or labels or whatever, but knowing that. And I know you and I have mentioned this before too. And there are times, and we try really hard. It's just some of the graphic designers that, there's almost this bravado that kind of like, I know what I'm doing because I've done the brochures for Nabisco and Nestle's, and I've done
Right.
it. But printing on flexible film is different. I'm not talking about even the colors. I'm talking about how the files are set
The
up and
production of it.
the
Yeah.
production part of it. And I have found, I don't know about you, but I have found we've walked away from projects because the art director just will not listen, and they
Yeah.
just will not get out of the way, because they are determined. And I don't know whether it was you and I had this project, but I can't remember what it was, but it was a decent sized company and there's like 5 or 6 SKUs, but the way he just continued to set up the artwork, it was like 160 printing cylinders. It was like,
Yeah.
dude, you're not reading the artwork guidelines that we've sent you.
Right.
We
The
can
printing
print up
process
to
is
10
really
colors, sometimes 12 if we're lucky, but if you're going to throw a bunch of PMS spot colors on there and think that somehow we magically can do this, but again, it's like, well, I can do that on paper. I can do that in court. Well, okay, knock yourself out. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, sometimes it is compared, right, to paper, like
Right.
holographic.
Holographic, that
It's
too.
like always
Yes.
a big conceptual one, and
Right.
it's stuff that's coming from so much of their digital, and
Yes.
then they want to match it in print, and then certain things can be done. So
Yeah.
that's the thing is sometimes it's like, well, we can do it, but meet us in the middle on
Right.
where are you sourcing this from? Where are
Right.
you finding this that you think you can get this done?
Yeah.
And then we've sourced some stuff, but sometimes cost wise, it's not going to work, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
conceptually, this idea they have, it's going to take more to invest in doing holographic, whatever.
Yeah. And again, that's just managing expectations.
Yes.
How,
Yeah.
do you really want to go down that road?
Right.
If you do, that kind of stuff. What about, as we kind of land this plane, Peg, I want to make sure that you've got a website. Tell us about the website. Tell us about kind of like, do people just kind of use a contact form on the website? Tell us
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
I'm just doing like Calendly, so I can
Okay.
just kind of make an appointment.
Yeah.
So it's just I've always been under Peg Brown Design, and
Yeah.
then now I've been doing a lot more artwork where I've been doing some old Florida stuff and just kind of
Nice.
old, funky pop.
Yeah.
So it's under wherewepause.com.
Okay.
So it's just kind of a throwback on some millennial stuff.
Yeah.
But I lay out packaging I've done. So copper top jerky, just
Yeah.
kind of get an idea of kind of what I did and where I lay out the packaging. But then we also usually do 3D mock-ups. Would provide those too for customers while they're waiting for their order. They can mark it
Nice.
having 3D. So that's always nice. Yeah. So I was trying to put together my case studies of kind of some of those problems I've solved.
And you're definitely open for business. This is
Yeah.
definitely like looking
yeah.
for, okay, whatever. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be film necessarily. I've seen you've done a
No.
lot of stuff in the bottles and jars
Or
and folding
branding
cartons.
or
Yeah.
sometimes sometimes there's a logo needed updated, that's normally been run a certain
Right.
way. Now going to packaging, they need it updated. So
Right.
that
Right.
30-year-old jerky logo, let's get it, ready for the new year.
Right.
So stuff like that as well. It's a one-off, but yeah.
Hey,
no, it's
no. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we set this up. You've always been good to us, and I want
absolutely.
people to understand that, again, the you can definitely tell a difference between the Peg Browns and some others. You need somebody you can trust. Peg will handle it. Just get it done. Tell me when it's done and send it over. And frankly, from the production side of things, that's a we don't have to double track anyone's work. We just know it's going to be done right, which is a huge thing. And folks, just so people know that's why we've always just freelance with Peg. You work directly with her. You don't have to, keep us in the loop until your artwork is ready. I mean, Peg and I can always talk back and forth, or she can talk with a factory or whatever. But I just want people to know that, this is a good first step. If you think that the preliminary pricing and things like that look great, then get with Peg, and you're going to go print and get with Peg and take that off your shoulders. Then, again, thinking of it at the last minute. Oh yeah, we're ready to go. Where's your artwork? Oh, I don't know. I thought you guys were doing it. No, it goes to Peg. Go to Peg. But
Yeah.
anything else you want to add there, Peg? Okay, good.
Wow, so great. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
David. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone. It's David Marinak. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to see more, here's another video that you can check out, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.